These are like the core 4 steps that I would suggest you start with for any new symbol that you want to analyze, okay? Things like the square of 9, the ruler, the GAN can be added after these core 4 steps. So step 1, always start with the helionatal aspects on timetrades.com. So by that, I mean, go to this page here. So when you first go to the chart page, this is QQQ, hit the natal aspects tab over here on the right, okay? And that'll bring you to this tab. This is the key to everything else in our process, okay? So the information here is very critical to setting up your chart correctly. Step 2, set up some planetary lines using the slowest heliocycles first, okay? So start with heliocentric cycles that are conjunct fixed stars, okay? So this is what I mean by fixed stars with an offset, right? So I'm going to expand on that and just say planets that are conjunct fixed stars with an offset. Now, I'm going to show you an example of what I mean by that. Here for QQQ, we've got Mercury conjunct Antares, okay? So this is the only fixed star conjunction that we have here. It's rare that you'll see more than one. Sometimes you'll see 0, sometimes you'll see 3. But let's take this as an example. We've got Mercury conjunct Antares. Mercury's at 241, Antares at 246, rounded up to 247, okay? So how do we represent that in our chart? Here we are with NQ, and we've got planetary lines intercurrent. So we're scaling this using mod 360 because we're on a daily time frame, okay? If you use Mercury using wheel of 24, it's going to be a mess of lines on a daily time frame. You can do that on intraday, but not daily. So for the inner planets on a daily time frame, like Mercury, Venus, and Earth, I stick with mod 360. I don't use wheel of 24. So we turn on Mercury, but we give it an offset of 66.86. Why do we do that? 66.86 is 180 degrees before Antares, okay? So the reason we do that is we want the midpoint of the Mercury cycle to be conjunct Antares. So the midpoint of the cycle is the strong point. That's how we're organizing this. And then the result is the orange lines here. So the midpoint is right here where the lines cross. That's where it's conjunct Antares, okay? So let's go back to our process. So we've done this. We've added planets that are conjunct fixed stars with an offset. Then we add the outer planets using wheel of 24. So if we go and look at QQQ here, we have the planetary lines outer current script using wheel of 24, and it's scaled using $150 per cell. Now you want to make sure the scaling factor matches the inner one. So we've got inner using mod 360, that's 3600. So we also want to have the outer that uses wheel of 24, that needs to be 3600 divided by 24 equals 150. So they're both effectively using the same scaling factor. And you can tell because the gap in the lines here is at the midpoint, right? Here's the midpoint of the wheel of 24. Here's the gap in the mod 360 Mercury line. Okay, so we've got Jupiter, Neptune added here, and we've got Jupiter, Neptune added because we have Jupiter conjunct Neptune almost exact within less than half a degree of each other in the natal chart. So that is really important. So we need to make sure we accommodate that. That's the pink line, okay? And so we can move on to our next step. We've done that. Next step is add some of the inner planets using mod 360. Now, do we have any other inner planets? Yes, we do. We have Earth and Chiron. So if we go over here to our natal aspects, you'll see we have Earth sextile Chiron in the natal chart. So we can go back and we can use PL inner outer current. So this captures combinations of the inner planets and the outer planets. And here we've turned on Earth Chiron. And again, we're careful to make sure we're using the same scaling factor, 3600 using mod 360, okay? And we're using mod 360 because it's Earth, and that's one of the inner planets. So that gives us these light blue lines here. Let's zoom out a little bit and we can talk a little bit about what we see on the chart. And while that is updating, I just want to go back and review the rest of the analysis process. When we zoom out, after we zoom out, we can look at the major planetary line resets and midpoints. So that's our anchor point for symmetry. I've seen enough over the past week to be confident enough to promote the symmetry work from experimental to ready for prime time. So I'm going to be incorporating that into the go forward process here. And then step 4 involves building the vibration using the vibration scripts, using the same method as the planetary lines, starting with the fixed stars with the offset. Those should have priority. Then the outer planets, and then finally the inner planets. And you can stop at any time in this process once you get a vibration that you're happy with, okay? That's the structured analysis process I would suggest that any time trades user start with. And then from here, this provides a baseline for your chart. And then from here, you can add additional features such as the square of 9, the ruler, or GAN fans as you like. Now, let's go back and take a look, step back a bit and take a look at the chart here. What do we see? We see the resets of the major planetary line cycles. There's one happening over here, November 21 to 24, that's Mercury. And we had one over here, October 20th. So let's take a look at a couple things. I want to take a look at symmetry, okay? On this chart, I'm going to focus in on symmetry relative to Jupiter, Neptune. Okay, let's just declutter the chart a little bit. I'm going to turn off all these other planetary lines, and I'm going to keep Jupiter, Neptune on there. All right, and I'm going to turn on Jupiter, Neptune symmetry. Now, I want to give a shout out to Time Trades user Ben that showed a superior way to determine symmetry, and that is using the Fibonacci time tool. So it's over here, Fibonacci time zone. The symmetry point is this point here, which is the reset point of the last Jupiter-Neptune cycle. So the way you use it is you can add a Fib time zone to the chart and then click on the center symmetry point, and then you can expand it out and it will spread out equally. And the reason it's doing that is because we've got it set to +1 and -1. So as long as we start measuring the Fib time zone from the center symmetry point, we will see it expand and contract like this with an equal bar count. So that's a very nice upgrade to how to use symmetry. One of the things I've done here is I've also color-coded the symmetry lines so that this red pair here is plus or minus 18 bars around the central point. And the red doesn't mean anything. All I'm trying to do is make it easy to find the 2 bars that are symmetrical, okay? Same thing with orange. Orange doesn't mean anything. It's just plus or minus 40 bars. The other thing I do to help keep myself from being confused with all of these lines is I name these Fibonacci time periods and give them plus or minus 40 bars. So I'll measure it using the time period measurement tool and then name the Fibonacci time series. Okay, so what's the result here? We've got some very good results. So you can take a look at the last 3 have been very good hits. So this is October 22nd, and this pairs with this low over here. So that's a good hit. This next one after that was October 28th, okay? And that pairs with this high over here back on April 2nd. And now we've got the light blue point November 5th, and that pairs with this high over here, March 25th. So what this tells us, we've got a pretty good combination. The next big date on the daily chart is the symmetrical relationship with March 13th this year, and that is coming up on November 17th, okay? So November 17th is the next big day based on symmetry. And we can also do something else. We can use a faster cycle on the hourly chart. I've gone and updated my chart here to have 2 panes. The second pane on the left here is NQ hourly. And I've done the exact same thing, but instead of using Jupiter Neptune, I'm using Earth Chiron using the wheel of 24. I'm using the wheel of 24 on an intraday chart with Earth so I can get a little bit more precision, and this would be useful for those of you that are trading on shorter time frames. Okay, so in this case, where's the symmetry? We've got, let's zoom out a little bit and we can take a look. All right, I think one of the things that I'm confused with is I'm still seeing Jupiter-Neptune lines. So let's just hide those, and we want to turn on the Earth-Chiron lines. Here we go. Okay, Earth-Chiron symmetry is centered around this point here, which is the midpoint of the Earth-Chiron wheel of 24. So let me just show the settings here. This is using wheel of 24 scaled at $75 per cell, so it's a little faster. And all we're showing is Earth-Chiron synodic, okay? So this is the start of a 24-degree cycle over here, and this is the end of that same cycle, and this is the midpoint. So we can use either the midpoint or the start of a cycle to anchor our symmetry. So we're using the midpoint in this case, and you can see blue lines here. This blue line is plus or minus 32 bars, okay? And this identified a hit over here on October 31st, so it's off by 2 bars on the hourly chart. So it wasn't a direct hit this high, but it came within 2 hours of a similar hit over here in the past. So that's the first set as we work our way outwards. The next set occurred October 3rd. So let's see, that's this one here, okay? So this is a high, and this is near a high, partial hit, I would say. This next one over here, the historical symmetry hit October 31st. That was a low, and this was a direct hit, not a partial hit, hitting on the precise hourly bar November 5th at 2 p.m. So that basically indicated the second highest high of the week. The highest high was over here, but this was a significant top on Wednesday.